This is Promineo Tech's Front-End Bootcamp Week 11 coding project, creating a tic-tac-toe game using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. We were to have a heading showing the current player, a clear board button, and a function that displays the winner or whether the game is a tie and checks for victory conditions. Let's go over my HTML real quick. I decided to use nested divs with rows to create the game board, as a table proved too difficult to style. For the styling, I used a mix of my own CSS document and Bootstrap. My own CSS includes sizing the game spaces, adding borders to them, choosing the colors for the site, as well as hiding the alert with a media query so that the game board displays correctly on no matter what the screen size is. For the JavaScript, I'm using a for loop to create the event listener, as well as the ID numbers attached to each of the 9 game spaces. It starts with 1 since the lowest ID number is 1. I used an if statement to determine whether or not the event listener actually does anything. As long as the space is empty, then it will draw a symbol and then check for the end of the game, which is both a victory condition and a tie, and then it will finally switch player. If it is X, I'm using a ternary function. If it's X, it will turn to O. If it's not X, it will turn back to X. For checking the end of the game, I'm pushing each index number into an array based on the player, X squares and O squares, and then comparing these to the win conditions array at the top of the document. I'm using a Boolean to determine whether or not it needs to check for a tie. If the game is over and a player has won, then it will return no victory equals false, so then this if statement would not do anything. When the game is over and it is not a tie, then it also fills each empty game space with a single space, so it looks like it is empty but cannot be clicked on anymore. For the clear board button, I have it turn all the game space text back to an empty string, hide the alert again, and empty it as well so it can be filled with whatever the end game text is. And it switches the player back to X so that X will always be the first player, as well as emptying out the 2 arrays to start the count for the winner over again. And if I decide to try and make this game a tie, then I would do so like this, and it would display the game as a tie. However, if I want to try making it so that a player wins with the board full, it still returns no victory equals false, and thus X is the winner because this if statement does not trigger. And that is my tic-tac-toe game using HTML and CSS and JavaScript.